Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
Today, my pleasure to welcome in Matt Bové, who is the host of It's Always Game Day in Buffalo, the take command of Western New York, if you will. He's also the sports director at the ABC affiliate up in Western New York. Matt, how are you, sir? Good to talk to you for the second straight day.
Good to talk to you as well. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Had a great time on your pod. And actually, we had your co-host, Al Capaccio, on Take Command this morning, which means you get the radio duty in the afternoon. So let's just start super broad with this game. The idea that when this, if you think back to May when the schedule came out, everyone up there is probably like, easy win. Go into that one 2-0. Hopefully, if we can get past Aaron Rodgers in week 1, and then the Commanders, nothing to worry about. What's the vibe in Buffalo this week with the Bills at 1-1 and the Commanders coming in at 2-0?
I feel like there's a lot of pressure on the Bills this week because I agree with what you said earlier in the year, even just a couple weeks ago. I think most Bills fans would have circled this game on the schedule and said, okay, that's a win, and it should be a pretty easy win. But now, after what we saw from the Bills week 1, that they are not immortal and that the Commanders are 2-0, they're the team with the better record, I think Bills fans are a little bit nervous because they know they probably should win the game, but might not feel confident that they will win the game. That's kind of how I'm approaching this game, too. I think the Bills are a better team, but I don't think the Bills are so much of a better team that if they go in there and they don't play great or even well, that they're going to escape with a win. So I think I probably feel the same way as a lot of people here, where it's like, yeah, the Bills should win, but will they win?
Right. So that's going to, in part, depend on the health of a couple of key pieces. What do we know about Leonard Floyd's ankle injury and some of the other key guys like, Micah Hyde was missing practice earlier this week. What's the latest on their health? I know you spent most of the day watching players skate around as the Sabres, like the Capitals here, were doing their opening skate today. But what can you tell us about the health of some of the key defensive pieces for the Bills?
So both Leonard Floyd and Micah Hyde have said that they will play and that they intend to play. I think this is one of those situations where the players definitely want to be out there. The Bills might have to hold them back, though, and kind of protect them from themselves. I do think Micah Hyde will definitely play. Leonard Floyd, a bit more up in the air just because it is an ankle injury. The fact that he was out there today for Thursday's practice is a good sign for them. But I think they want to just be extra cautious with him, especially because they're still waiting for Von Miller to come back. Leonard Floyd has brought a lot of juice to this Bills defensive line as a rotation that they have not had in a while. So I think that if he is missing, that would be a huge loss for the Bills. But I think right now it's trending in the direction that both of those guys will probably be on the field Sunday.
Do you have confidence, though, that they will actually be themselves? Because I think that the idea of this front is pretty good. Like Gregory Rousseau has been pretty good through 2 games, but he's been inconsistent in his career. Ed Oliver has been really great through 2 games, inconsistent through his career. Floyd is a guy that makes both of their lives easier. If he's pretty blockable because he's hampered, like how does that affect Rousseau? How does that affect Oliver?
I think that it would definitely impact them, but I don't think that they would put, let's say Leonard Floyd is 80%. I don't think they're putting him out there if he's not at least close to 100%, just given what their expectations are for the entire season. So to me, like if those guys are on the field, they are pretty close to full speed ahead. I know that there's always injuries in the NFL. Every guy is playing through something in some capacity. It would definitely, though, if he's not playing, Leonard Floyd, for example, if he's not playing close to 100, if he's only 50%, that makes their rotation a lot more manageable for the Commanders' offensive line, just because even though it's been productive, it's not incredibly deep. It will be when Von Miller comes back, but right now, after Rousseau and Floyd, you're not really scared by guys like A.J. Epinesa, by Shaq Lawson. Totally fine, serviceable, rotational players in the NFL, but not guys who you really have to probably game plan against and be overly concerned that they could wreck the game. Now, I will say, Greg Rousseau, inconsistent in his career, not so far this year, and that dates all the way back to the start of training camp. He has been a guy that here on the beat people have thought was going to turn into a legitimate NFL, like big-time player this season, and so far he has. Even when he's not getting after the quarterback, he is making big plays. His play in the run game was already very polished, how he defends the run, and now that he's becoming a more productive pass rusher on top of that, he's a guy. He's somebody who I think a lot of people are going to learn about in the next couple weeks.
Anthony, this is why we do this. This is why we have this segment. This is why we call it Not My Beat, because we have someone else who's on the beat of the thing, and they tell us things like, hey, on the beat up here, people have been saying this, and then we seem really smart, and our audience gets smarter. Yep. Anthony, it's working. It took us, we're a year and a half into the show, but we got someone who said the thing exactly that we've been kind of scheming on the low the entire time.
Hey,
I'm glad that I could help you guys with that.
It takes time sometimes.
Yeah, it's just been a slow build till that moment about Greg Rousseau, who had that one coming. Anyway, Matt Bové is our guest. He is the sports director at the ABC affiliate up in Buffalo. He is also the host of It's Always Game Day in Buffalo, a fine Odyssey Sports podcast production. So if you want more from the Bills side of it, definitely check them out this week. Okay, so here's another one for you, Matt. I don't think you've probably ever been asked a question prefaced with, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Eric Bieniemy this morning. But I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Eric Bieniemy this morning, and that is, what kind of difference does Matt Milano make on this defense? Because most NFL defenses are just trying to survive at linebacker. San Francisco has the luxury of having Fred Warner. There's like one or two other dudes in the league that are like super duper special two-way run pass defenders. Milano's one of them. How does it help their defense?
Wow, what an answer you got from Bieniemy about Milano.
Oh man,
he over that guy. What a soundbite.
Hey, well, the funny thing is, he gave you guys gold in terms of just loving up a Milano. Didn't answer my question a lick, because my question was, how does it affect your offense? And he didn't give me any schematics, but he did say a lot of nice things about Matt Milano.
Matt Milano's a freak. I think Matt Milano has become a guy that a lot of people know about around the NFL, but even then, the praise that he is being given by, the offensive coordinator of the Washington Commanders or people around the NFL, it's still not nearly enough at just how dynamic he is. Matt Milano has played alongside Tremaine Edmonds for the last several years. Tremaine Edmonds leaves in free agency, goes to Chicago, signs a huge deal. The entire time they played together, Matt Milano was the better player. But Tremaine Edmonds got the better numbers, and he picked up all the tackles, and he was, a first-round pick, so everybody around the league knew about Tremaine Edmonds. But that entire time, Matt Milano was the one who was making the game-changing play, who was wrecking an offensive game plan because he is so rangy and covers so much of the field. He's so good and knowledgeable about when he needs to, jump up into a play, when he needs to step back. He just does everything so well, and it's so impressive for a guy who's still relatively young in his career. He is, now a veteran. He's been around for enough, but he's still got a lot of tread on those tires. Matt Milano is legitimately the third best player on the Buffalo Bills. When Von Miller comes back, maybe you could say he's fourth, but right now the only players who are more impactful than him are Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. After that, Matt Milano is the heartbeat of the defense and is a really big reason why this team has had some success in the last couple of years.
Yeah, and it is why they've been able to sustain as Poyer and Hyde have fallen off a little bit. They're still very, very good. Obviously, Tre'Davious White on the outside. There's a lot of good players, but Milano is the best of the bunch. I would definitely agree with you on that. As for those other two guys, the Allens, Josh, and the Diggs, Stephon, you've gotten to watch Allen grow and mature. What is the 2023 version of Josh Allen? What elements of kind of the question marks at the start of his career still remain that are potential opportunities for the Commanders to win on Sunday?
Okay, so the Josh Allen 2023 is kind of what coaches want Josh Allen to be, and I think sometimes that's a blessing and sometimes it's a curse. I think sometimes it forces him into making smarter decisions that he wouldn't always make, but I also think sometimes it forces him into think a little bit too much and focus less on just being a freak athlete and reacting to something and going out and making the ridiculous play. The Josh Allen experience will always be the most amazing plays for the good reasons and then for the bad reasons. But you can't have one without the other. Everybody wants to turn Josh Allen into something that he's never going to be. They want him to make the spectacular play, but avoid the plays that lead to turnovers. Well, one means you get the other, and that's always going to be the case. So Josh Allen right now is a little bit more of like a refined version of, hey, maybe the good won't be as crazy impressive, but it can still certainly be enough to win a lot of games. But the bad won't come back to bite you in the butt as much. That did not happen week one, and everybody was just kind of going, what's happening? We spent an entire summer talking about this. Well, then he responds in week two with an AFC Offensive Player of the Week, and he was really, really good. Basically, he was elite again. So Josh Allen is it just kind of depends on the week. He's absolutely good enough to win any single game that he plays in, and the Bills always have the benefit of the doubt of having that guy who is a game changer. So I think right now, honestly, the Commanders are getting him at a bad time because he's only a week removed from a really bad game. And usually when he does that, which has been, I don't know, every couple weeks or every couple months for the last 4 years, he responds with a month where he plays absolutely lights out. So I was not surprised to see it against the Raiders, and I honestly think that that will continue for the foreseeable future.
The question I would have about his performance against the Raiders is, like, how do I want to phrase this? Like, he was so efficient with the football. He's pretty quick to get rid of it for long stretches of that game. He still does hold the ball at times for a long time. But, he's now at the point where between the two games, he leads the NFL in completion percentage after 2 weeks.
Yeah.
How much of that is, like, freakish physical talent versus accelerated / elevated, I guess the word I'm looking for, elevated decision-making?
I think it's elevated decision-making, and I also think it fits into the box of what they've wanted to do the last couple weeks, and I think a lot of that will continue this week against Washington, because in matchups where they think that they have the worst not the worst offensive line, but in matchups when they're going against a strong defensive line, like New York, and then I almost said Oakland, like Vegas with Max Crosby, you want to make sure that those are not players or positions that can take over a game. So they're kind of just protecting Josh from himself. And they're like, hey, dude, get the ball out of your hands in 2 seconds. Let the playmakers go do your thing. When they give you an opportunity, take that because we know that you can. So I think we're going to see a lot of that this week as well. I don't think they want to let Chase Young or Montez Sweat or Payne take over a game. I think they want to make sure that that does not happen. And the easiest way for them to do that as an offense is just getting the ball out of Josh's hands and getting it to all of these different weapons. The Bills' weapons are still not world class, but they are so much better than they have been in years past. For the last couple of years, they had to bring back Cole Beasley, who they let walk because they needed somebody, and John Brown. And they had all these guys that weren't even good enough to make other teams this training camp. This year they have legitimate options, which I think helps them with that specific kind of game plan.
So let's go there. Then I want to circle back to the O-line. Who do they have that folks should be wary of besides Stephon Diggs? Obviously very familiar with Diggs around here, grew up around here, he a Terp, etc. But what do they have besides Diggs? I think the other name a lot of people know because he's made so many high-profile plays at this point is Gabe Davis. But obviously they've got a pair of Daltons at tight end. What else are they working with, and how have those pieces been integrated so far through preseason, training camp, and ultimately these first 2 games?
So far, I would say you kind of hit on the big ones. It's Diggs, and then after that, it's Davis. Davis is still their best vertical threat. He is really, really good. His depth of reception is crazy just because they basically do 2 things with him. They use him to block, or they have him just run down the field, and we're like, we'll hit you over the top. So those are their 2 top options. They're incorporating Kincaid into the offense more and more every single week. And Dawson Knox has been on the injury report the last couple of days. Their tight end who they've had for the last 4 years. So I think this is a big opportunity for Kincaid to kind of really, really shine and show that he's able to carry the number 1 workload for a tight end. After that, though, it's really the running backs. And this has not been a running team for a lot of years, and a lot of people have criticized the Bills' inability to run. Well, they now look like they have somebody who's a lot more dynamic than anybody that they've had since really LaShawn McCoy, because James Cook is just a really shifty, effective runner. And then when you add in the other pieces, like Damian Harris and Latavius Murray, as your 2 and 3 are really strong options, especially because they all have different skill sets. James Cook, you can use in the passing game, but you can also turn around and hand the ball to him. Damian Harris, if you're by the goal line or you're inside the 2, you're going to hand it to him. The Bills have struggled inside their own 5-yard line for as great as their offense has been. So he was kind of their solve there. And then Latavius Murray is just your hybrid of somebody who can do a little bit of everything. He's the oldest running back in the NFL, but he certainly does not play like that. After that, Deontay Hardy is a guy who they think can be a bigger contributor than he has been. And then Trent Sherfield, they signed for Miami. He spent some time in San Francisco as well. He is somebody who eventually will make an impact and will eventually make a big play. It just has not happened yet. He's their 3rd wide receiver, and he does not even have a catch so far this season, which is ridiculous because isn't that not crazy? And how about this? In their last game, they had 9 different players catch a pass. Trent Sherfield was not one of those 9. So eventually, I always say, like, Trent Sherfield is going to have a game where he has 2 catches for 98 yards and a touchdown. It's going to happen at some point. It just hasn't happened yet. So keep him kind of in the back of your mind as you're waiting for the Bills offense to do something, because eventually it's going to happen.
So we'll just mark that clip, and if it happens this weekend, we'll just sit here and cry and listen to it on repeat and talk about how smart Matt Bové is. I got 2 more questions for you, Matt. Matt Bové is the host of It's Always Game Day in Buffalo, our sister podcast in the Odyssey Network for the Bills, as well as a sports director up at Channel 7 in Buffalo. So let's go back to the O-line first. Obviously, whenever a team is facing the Commanders, that is top of the scouting report. Like, how is your O-line? Because this D-line is sick. How do you think that matchup shapes up for Buffalo? Both, personnel-wise, and you've touched on this a little bit already, but their ability schematically to protect Josh Allen.
Advantage Washington, but probably not as big of an advantage as you may think, because the Bills' offensive line has played a little bit better than I think we expected them to. A lot of that has to do with their right tackle, Spencer Brown. Spencer Brown, really inconsistent. First year in the NFL, awesome. It was like, okay, the Bills have found their new right tackle. Then he got injured and never really looked the same. The Bills were adamant that it was his job and that they thought that his poor play was because of the injury and not because of who he actually is as a player. And he did an outstanding job against Max Crosby. Basically, Max Crosby did not impact the game at all. And I think if you're the Bills, that's one of the biggest reasons why you won, and it was so lopsided. Left tackle Deion Dawkins, good player, above average NFL player, not quite elite, but certainly not bad. Mitch Morse in the middle has just kind of solidified everything since he got here. And then the 2 guards, one of them was actually a rookie, Osiris Torrance. He was a second-round pick, just came into training camp and flat out won the job. And he did it against somebody who's actually pretty good. Ryan Bates probably starts on a lot of teams, but Osiris Torrance won that job. And then Connor McGovern, this will only be his 3rd game with the Bills, came from Dallas, has been good up to this point. It's one of those things where, like, if you're not noticing him on an every down basis, that's probably a good thing, especially given the defensive lines that they've played. So I still think that that's an area where Washington can try and come in here and, wreak havoc. But I do think the Bills' offensive line should be up to the task, just given who they've played. I mean, the Jets' defensive line, Quentin Williams is a freak, and Max Crosby's really good. Washington has more people, but I don't know if any of them are to the level of Quentin Williams or Max Crosby.
If they do, it's Allen and Payne inside, or the level of Quentin Williams, which, the way Payne's played the first 2 weeks, he's real close. And I also, somewhere in the deep recesses of my mind, feel like John Allen has had a day against Connor McGovern somewhere in the past when they were in Dallas, but I don't know where that game is, and so I'm just going to say that out loud and hope that I'm right. All right, last thing for you is kind of the mindset mentality. This is some level full circle here, but after the Washington game for Buffalo, Miami comes to town. Miami is a bad matchup for the Bills with how fast they play. Obviously, division rival. They've played some pretty epic games over the last couple of years. They are 1-1, and the threat of going to 1-2 certainly feels like it should keep them focused on this week. But what's the mentality in terms of focus, knowing that large game against Miami is looming a week later?
I think one of the reasons why this Bills team has been to the playoffs so perennially the last 5-6 years is because that is not an issue. I don't think they are ever looking ahead of an opponent or looking down on opponents. Sure, they slip up at games that they probably shouldn't lose, but I never think it's because they're looking ahead. And I think that has a lot to do with Sean McDermott, which is, a lot to do with Ron Rivera, essentially, and then Andy Reid, and whatever branches of that coaching tree are still going strong. So I don't really think they're looking past Washington. I think they had their wake-up call very early in the season when they lost to Zach Wilson for the 2nd straight season, and we're like, what are we doing? Like, we cannot let this happen. So I don't think there's any even aspect of them looking ahead or overlooking anybody. I think they know they're going into Washington and will have a really tough matchup. All of that being said, though, the Bills legitimately believe they are one of the best teams in the NFL, and they think that if they play their game, there are very few teams that can beat them. And I don't know if I'm maybe as confident as they are, not specifically about this matchup, but just about like their entire outlook for the season. But I think they're pretty close to that. When they are humming, when Josh Allen is doing his thing and the defense is what they are, they're a really, really tough team to beat.
No, I think that's fair, and especially with Allen because, Mahomes is the best quarterback I've ever seen play the sport. He's got to keep doing it to be able to be called the GOAT over Brady. Longevity playing a big factor there. But on any given day, Allen might be the one dude who I've seen that go, yeah, that guy could be better than Mahomes on a given day, which just tells you how talented Josh Allen is. Matt Bové covering the Bills up in Buffalo on television. And then for us here at Odyssey, where he is the host of It's Always Game Day in Buffalo. Matt, you coming down for the game this weekend? I know it's a Buffalo-Washington double because the Sabres are opening the preseason at the Capitol Sunday night, a thing I learned from your co-host Sal Capaccio earlier today.
Yeah, and you know what? Really poor planning by the NHL because that game's at 2 o'clock. If you could have put that game at, 6 o'clock, I could have tried to do the double dip. But no, I am coming. But, I'm a little bit concerned because I keep seeing that there's going to be, terrible weather.
Yeah.
So I'm actually now thinking about flying in tomorrow as opposed to Saturday. So I don't exactly – when I get off the phone with you, I'm going to get on the phone with American Airlines and figure out what exactly I'm doing here.
All right. Well, keep me in the loop. If you're in town, happy to play host. It'd be great to meet you in person after the amount we've talked into microphones the last couple of days. And hopefully I'll see you not rain-drenched at the stadium on Sunday, if not before.
Beautiful. Looking forward to it. Thanks for having me today, guys. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. That's Matt Bové, everybody. A true delight here on The Hoffman Show. Anthony, I told you after what I tell you when I got done doing his pod yesterday. I was like, we got to have that guy on the show. He's great.
Yep, and he really was great.
And Sal Capaccio, his co-host, is a legend up there in Buffalo. He was great on Take Command. We'll play that for you tomorrow. So, really, we're just winning here. We're just doing we, Anthony, are doing a great job.
Yes, we are, sir.
And you know what else is good guest booking?
What else?
Kedrick Golston.
Yes, sir.
You know when he is?
I think he's next.
He is next.
This is the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.